I'm here with Jeepy again. Jeepy's a 1995 Jeep Cherokee Sport. And Jeepy is awaiting a new head. After 300,000 plus miles, the head on this 4.0 liter inline six engine finally couldn't take any more and developed some cracks in the combustion chambers of cylinder 1 and 2. Okay, when you got a Jeep engine like the one in Jeepy, that's got over 300,000 miles on it. Somewhere during that lifespan, the engine was out, got bored out to 30 over. The head that crack's been on and off there at least 3 times that I can remember. But here we are now, it's 2025. We're talking about used parts now that are 30 years old or more. You got to start making some different decision making when you're at this stage of the game. Okay, the first thing I have to consider is that 4.0 engine, even on its rebuild with the 30 over bore, has probably been back in service for 150,000 miles. So it's worn out again. Now, you're not going to read in a book or a manual that a new head on an old engine could lead to the bottom end failing on you. But I know from experience that that can happen. And I've talked to machinists that say, you rebuild the head, put it on an old engine, next thing you know, your bottom end has a problem. So I got a Clearwater head right here. And I can't risk putting that on a worn out block and bottom end. So my selection is a used head. We're going to make sure everything on this is good to go. Facebook Marketplace is a great place to find used Jeep 4.0 engine parts. You just have to be patient. Don't send any money through cyberspace to somebody who says they're going to hold it for you. Make all your cash transactions person to person. I was patient on this purchase. At the end of the day, it wasn't exactly what I wanted. So this came out of a stroker. The guy who sold me this just wanted the bottom end of the stroker. He didn't want the head. His head was all nice and ported. This was all cleaned up real nice. Not brand new. And we will go over this together and I'll show you all the defects. If you're buying a used part, you really got to look it over, and if the guy tells you you can bolt it right on, you cannot. just bolt it right on without taking a good look at it. I've already done some disassembly to this, but where I'm at right now, I'm going to remove all the valves and take a good look at the valve seats. My first observation, the intake valve seats are still the original in-cast valve seats. They call those integral valve seats. The exhaust valve seats are all replacement. So with the used head, this is one of the costs you have to think about. Your valve seats on the 4.0 head are integral. They're part of the casting. And after 30 years, that's a lot of wear on this. So I can observe right away that these are replacement exhaust valve seats. See this lip right here? The Jeep 4.0 liter engine, the heads all have integral valve seats. Once again, that means that this valve seat is part of the cast iron. You can see on this exhaust valve seat that that's not part of this cast iron, is it? And my first observation is there's a nice little lip right there of the old cast iron. And if you're talking about porting and polishing your head, my first observation is in a stroker, this is obstructing exhaust gas from getting out. That little lip right there. So you got to ask yourself, who did this work? Real quick, how you would replace an integral valve seat. I'm using this wood drill bit as just an example. You would have a tool. It's like a drill bit, but it's a reamer. It's going to remove the casting material, leave you an area, and then you buy replacement valve seats. You would cool it down somehow and perhaps heat the head and then drive it in there. Most likely you'll have a guide stuck in here so you get everything in there nice and smooth. And then with your valve, lap it to the new valve seat and make sure everything's seating nice. So that's essentially what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to take all the valves out and we're going to check all these valve seats and make sure they're nice, pit free, and they have a good grind on them. Another option I was thinking about was getting a used head off Marketplace. You could probably pick one up for 50 bucks. Then take it to the machine shop and drop 600 on a rebuild. With that scenario, you do run the risk of putting a rebuilt head on an old, worn out bottom end, and it's a phenomenon with these that next thing you know, your bottom end is exhibiting what looks to be blow by. You take the oil cap off, you got smoke coming out, oil all over the place, your rear seal is blown out. Okay, we'll go down each cylinder and look at these. Okay, cylinder 1. Exhaust valve seat is a replacement. The intake is still integral. We can see here that the valve guides are replacement valve guides. The in-cast valve guide has been drilled out and they pressed in a replacement valve guide. And see where the casting has this rough edge here? Cracks can emanate from that. It's not cause for rejection. But it implies that the person who did this job was not real proud of his work. Cylinder 3, cylinder 4, cylinder 6. Okay, I inspected all the valves. I have one bad one. I checked all of them for pitting on the face, and this one has severe pitting. None of them look like they've been overheated. So I bought a replacement, one exhaust valve. There's another $30 to this project. Okay, I'm going to take each valve, and with a little valve grinding compound, I'm going to lap the valve to the valve seats. The intake valve seats are all integral, and the exhaust valve seats are all replacement. When I'm done, I'm going to use Prussian blue and make sure I have a nice concentric ring on each one, approximately the same thickness all the way around. I'm going to pay particular attention to this new valve that I purchased. She's a beauty. Okay, we'll put a little bit of valve grinding compound on here. The best way to do this is you take a piece of hose and you stick it over the end and clamp it down, and then use that hose. I'm using my head support tools. I want to allow gravity to hold this in place, but I'm telling you, these tools kind of have a tendency not to work too good. But that sure looks good in your toolbox, doesn't it? At the end of the day, the tried and true tool works like a champ. Okay, honestly, I don't remember ever using this one. You could probably do a lot of damage with it. Okay, see this nice concentric ring? That's what we're looking for. My new valve, I think that needs a little bit more work on it. Valve seat, that area right there. I've already checked all the other cylinders. I'm happy with them all. A little more work on this new exhaust valve. We'll put the valves in. Okay, pitting is going to allow some gases to escape past there. And eventually, it's going to get worse. Those pits aren't going to suddenly heal themselves up. Okay, while we're here talking about valve seats, New Way sells a kit. It's very expensive and it has every cutting head you could ever imagine. I have a whole garage full of kits where I only use one piece of it. If I wasn't nearing the end of my life, I'd probably think about purchasing something like that, because you can go on Amazon and eBay and find all kinds of cool stuff now. But my suggestion is one of those India manufactured carbide faced grinding tools. Those are like $200 and you just get the one you need for the head you're working on. Okay, see my ring on this brand new valve? That concentric ring is getting thicker now. That's telling me that my new valve is seating more efficiently with my intake replacement valve seat. I think I'll do a little bit more work on that, and then I'm going to call it good. When this tool's working right, it sure is efficient. Okay, I don't know if I'm happy or sad about the fact that this replacement 7120 head has exhaust valve seats in replacement of the integral valve guide seats, and all new valve guides. Somebody did a lot of work, or somebody paid a lot of money. Okay, I'm going to take one good look at everything and have it all documented on this video. I'm also looking at where my spark plug's coming in. Gold. Somebody spent a little money on the threads for these spark plugs. Okay, see that rough edge on the cast iron? When you're machining stuff and you don't want cracks to emanate, it's best to smooth that out and burnish it. Burnishing, that's what that's called. It's not cause for rejection of this head. And my hat's off to the guy who maybe did this in his garage. Needless to say, I got all new valve guides. Let's test them all real quick. Okay, a quick test is you just put the valve in and see if there's any wobble on it. Very little on that one. None on, barely any on that one. I checked them all. I'm happy. Okay, well, we got this sitting up on our head supports. Let's take a look at this real quick. Here's our head gasket. And the most common fault with this head gasket is combustion gases leak past this gasket, and that gets into the water jacket. Okay, so that's these holes right here. Water jacket. Here's where the majority of your flow comes up through the head. That's behind number 6. And then each cylinder does have a little bit of flow through these holes. These holes are for the manufacturing process to remove the sand from the cast iron mold. It's how these little passages are made. This does give you some cooling properties because water gets in here, and that's more surface area to remove heat. So I've heard of guys filling these in with JB Weld. I've also heard of fellas that actually weld these shut. To them, the properties of this opening that remove heat are less important than making sure you don't have a blown head gasket again. Clearwater doesn't close these up when they sell their high performance head. Edelbrock doesn't close up the holes on their high performance heads. I'm leaving these open. I'll use spray copper for any wiggle room on my surface flatness. Plus, if I got a blown head gasket, I'll just pull this head off again. All right, we already determined that our valve guides are replacement valve guides. So somebody with the original in-cast valve guides did a test similar to this. See, that valve has no movement. When they did this wiggle test, it was probably all over the place. So they needed to replace these. They drilled out the in-cast valve guide. and they inserted an aftermarket valve guide. Okay, on a replacement valve guide, this part right here is still part of the cast iron, but from here up, the chimney is part of the replacement. To replace these, you drill through the cast iron, enlarging the hole and inserting a new valve guide. So you would drill a hole down here, and you can probably knock that chimney off with a chisel and then finish your hole up. But here's what's important. On an in-cast valve guide, this is 0.53, the chimney. With a replacement, it's 0.5 approximately. What does that mean to your Fel-Pro assortment of replacement valve stem seals? And these nice little tools that they give you. They don't fit. So I bought a used head, had no idea that this had replacement valve guides in it. There's another $77 out of my wallet. Okay, real quick. Here's a stock valve stem seal. Okay. 0.67. Here's the one that I bought from Competition Cams. 0.54. Okay, we have 3 valve stem seals here. Let's start with the one that came with this purchase. Okay, the rubber's failed on this. See that? It's not seating any longer. I suspect a chemical cleaning solvent was used to clean this head and make it look more appealing to me when I went and looked at it. Man, that sure is clean. But it destroyed the rubber on these valve stem seals. Okay? So whoever did this is 0.65 approximately. They knew that their size is going to be different with replacements. Here's our stock out of the Fel-Pro kit, 0.678. See that? That's not even close to going to fit. So you have to go online and purchase a replacement for the kit. These are $77. Competition Cams are what I went with. Let's take a look at it. Metal to metal, so I don't have to worry about the rubber breaking down. It's Viton rubber, Viton oil, fuel, chemical solvent resistant rubber. They sure look nice, don't they? Okay, now this little tool that Fel-Pro puts in here, this tool is putting the onus back on the purchaser, you. If you're working and you pop that spring off and you try to bring the Fel-Pro kit back, hey, your valve stem seal failed. Well, we gave you a tool to prevent that. They're not going to take these back if you lose that spring, okay? So this tool covers that keeper notch, right? If you're changing your valve stem seals and the head's in situ and you got air pressure on here, you don't want to make any mistakes. What I'm getting at is I'm not going to use this. I'm going to drive these on and then this valve is just going to pop right through from the bottom, okay? I'm not worried about the spring coming off. But if it does, I have some extra ones. This is for a V8. Okay, this is of interest. Here's my tool to drive these in, and this is good for a 0.5 or a 0.53. It basically goes over the spring and rubber. And on the Fel Pro, you're going to be driving this in, and the force is applied to the rubber. I mean, you don't want to get a big hammer out. You're just going to lightly drive these down. On this $77 competition cam, Viton rubber, this tool does not fit around that very easily. So I have some assembly lube, but I think I'm going to try some petroleum jelly first to make sure I can get that tool around there and not damage anything. Okay. Okay, let me take a breather on this. Okay, after taking a couple of deep breaths, I got this competition cam valve stem seal to go in my tool. But could you imagine trying to drive this on and you're doing your valve stem seals without pulling the head off? Man. You got air pressure holding this up. Jeez. Okay, this showed up from Amazon. The bag was all open. Somebody put some Scotch tape on it. This is definitely clean and dry when you drive this on. They've eliminated the rubber failure possibility with metal to metal. I'm just going to go down and drive all 16 of these in, because I'm sure I'll probably screw a couple of them up. All right, the first fear factor. I'm not worried about the $77. I'm worried about the time it's going to take me if I screw these up. So 11:30 seconds is the depth of this. So we'll swap this over 2 inches. $40. That's not doing me any good, is it? 45. I can't do that math that quick. Okay, so there is a little beveled edge right there. This should drive just about flush with our end cast portion of our valve guide, which I'm going to call the boss. Let's give this a try. Okay, it definitely bottoms out there. You can feel it. There is some space right there. I'm going to have to hit it a couple more times. Maybe metal to metal hammer is a better idea. Nope, it's bottomed out. Okay. That's a relief. That you can tell it bottoms out. And I can look in there and see and compare it to another one that the Viton rubber is meeting the top of the chimney on our replacement valve guide. It is kind of tough getting these competition cams in our tool. And then the other thing about this tool that we were talking about that Felpro supplies, it's not designed to come up through the valve guide. Okay, let me do the math. 11 left. Okay, some of these springs don't want to go in here very easy, so definitely take your time on these competition cam valve stem seals. Okay, I was rolling along really good, and then when I got down here, I must have got complacent. Or maybe the lighting threw me off, but these last 3, I screwed them up good. This one I drove too hard, and this popped through, which I wasn't expecting that. On this position, the competition cam valve stem seal just came off by hand. And then it dawned on me, these are replacement valve guides. The depth of these, that's dependent on the guy that installed them. So I got to be careful I'm not driving those valve stem seals deeper into the head casting. Luckily, I have 4 more. And I'm going to be very careful. I'd like to have 1 extra. There's a special tool available to remove these. It's basically just a pair of pliers. Okay, I don't know what's going on down here, but I've exhausted my supply of valve stem seals. So I'm going to have to reorder these. Luckily, on Amazon, these will be here tomorrow. Sometimes it's better just to walk away, take a little break. I knew that. I've learned this lesson before. It doesn't make any sense, though. These went in so simple. All right, I am definitely going to put some of the valves in while I'm waiting for my valve stem seals. That snap-on hammer must have been a little bit too much mallet for this job. That's a $77 mistake right there, plus another day. All right, I'm going to use some assembly lube on the valve stem, and then a little bit around the face of the valve and the seat. With the head off, this will go right through the valve stem seal, in theory, and not pop the spring off. Really kind of bizarre how that last 2 valve stem seals wouldn't go in. Okay, another way to test your valve guides, you can create a little vacuum with your finger. See that? Let's show you, run this one. Boy, she's beautiful. You can see the Viton rubber through the springs. What a beautiful sight. Okay, I don't know what's going on down here, but with a little inspection, you can see tooling marks down here. So I'm going to take the blame for screwing all those up. It was a $77 mistake, but it looks like those valve guides are showing a little bit of damage, perhaps, when they were installed. So it's on me. But maybe somebody did do this in their garage and they started down here and they got better and better as they went down. Okay, I should have stopped when I was getting tired. I didn't. We'll continue this later. Okay, these competition cam valve stem seals are only $20 for a packet. So that's a relief. Before I go to bed, this is really bugging me. Why just down here I couldn't get those on? You do see some tooling marks on that. All right, well, we'll continue this later. All right, here's my new arrival competition cams. Another set of valve guide seals. Okay, this one's not pre-opened. Valve seals, metal body, 517-16. The ability to get these rapidly now through the mail helps out quite a bit. Boy, these are a lot shinier and better shape than that other set, huh? So I really don't understand why only these two would not accept a valve stem seal. I definitely see tooling marks on this. And the outside is not really perfectly cylinder. Okay, I'm out here in the sunlight. I'm gonna really take my time on this. I don't want to order a third kit of valve stem seals. Okay, it looks like the outside of the chimneys on these two might be askew from perpendicular a little bit. These go down quite a bit of the way, see that? So I'm just going to take it easy and try to pay close attention as I drive those down. Okay, I'm swapping out my hammer here, metal to metal. That still didn't go in right. What is going on with this? Okay, that's 3 on that one. Luckily I got 16 of these to try. Okay, I don't know. What's causing this? I'm really starting to get worried about this now. I'm down to 15. Okay, there, see the spring? That's what the little tool in the Felpro kit is for. That spring can unseat from that, and they give you that tool in an attempt to prevent that. That's Felpro, not competition cams. Okay, I can already see that that one's not going on straight, and I just hit it like once or twice. Whoever put these replacement valve guides in damaged this chimney somehow. And right now my stress level is beginning to rise. Okay, on this one I gave it a good hard whack. And it drove on nice and flush, but it went too far. And I'm starting to wonder if I'm driving these valve guides deeper into the head. Okay, I got that one with a good metal to metal whack on this, but not too hard. Let's try to replicate this. These do have a little bevel in here to get it started. Okay, there it is. That might have been too hard on that one. Okay, it took me 5 valve stem seals to get 2 in there on the end. I did my best. Okay, unfortunately, 16 minus 5 means I don't have enough for another head, so I want to pull this valve back out and take a good look at that valve guide right there, because that one, that valve guide, the size of that made these competition cam metal to metal. It seemed kind of loose, so let's take a look at that before we call this good. And we'll put these 2 valves in also. Okay, once again we'll put a little bit of assembly lube on the stem. And then to prevent the initial metal to metal, we're going to put a little bit on the valve face. Sure is a good feeling having those in there, man. Okay, that's tight with my fingers. Okay, that's nice and tight. I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, the other one I want to check is the number 2 exhaust valve. This number 2 exhaust valve is where I discovered the initial floating valve stem seals. Let's take a good look at that. And also, I believe that's the one that seemed to be loose. Okay, look what I found on cylinder 2. There's our there's our valve stem seal. That's not supposed to do that. Okay, I'm going to stop for the night. I need to think about this. Okay, that looks good. Let's zero this out. It was the number 2 cylinder exhaust valve stem seal that alerted me that something was amiss with this cylinder head. During inspection, that valve stem seal was essentially floating with the valve. So now that we know that the replacement valve guides during installation may be deformed a little bit, I suspect this one is under the 0.5 that's nominal for a replacement valve guide. Okay, the valve stem seal does meter some oil to keep lubrication between the valve stem and the valve guide. These replacement valve guides have a nice, almost threaded interior to them, as does these Viton rubber competition cams. So that's where our metering takes place. Okay. There's the 9 valve stem seals that I destroyed trying to install them. So when a valve stem seal fails like this, the oil that's remaining up here under the rocker cover on its journey back to the galley and into the crankcase, while it's up here in the springs and keepers, it can leak into cracks in the rubber and the valve stem seals. So that gravity oil flows down and then it sits under the valves. When you start your engine, you'll see a blue smoke out the back as that oil burns off. If it goes away after initial startup, most likely the valve stem seals are bad. If it's blowing blue smoke all the time, it could be valve stem seals, but that's not the most probable cause. All right. That's it.